framing some things, framing the image. I think it's good. I think here it looks like things are going well. We'll start in 3 minutes. Today's live stream is apparently going well. If I don't move, it's going to be okay. Let's go. We'll start the live in a little while. 2 minutes, we'll start our live. We are in Sao Paulo. Some of you always ask me, tell me one thing. What book are you reading? Look, now I'm going to start reading. There are 4 books. This book here, The Supreme in Transformation. I'm also going to read this one, The Science of Good Decisions. Very interesting. And I'm also going to read this one, Unequal and Divided, which is very interesting. And I'm also going to read this one, The Technical Feudalism. How big tech is already dominating the market. There are 4 little books here. Is there another one I'm looking at? But these 4 little books are the new ones I have to work on. My new ideas, new ones that I've implemented. Obviously, little by little, I'm bringing their content to our live streams, putting my ideas together and creating a different line that's more compatible with what I think too. Not exactly what they say, but close to what I think. Just a minute and we'll start today's live. Okay, it's 8 p.m. Let's start our live broadcast today. We're in Sao Paulo and today is April 30th, 2025, and the live broadcast is Neuroscience of Corruption. Neuroscience of Corruption, most people already know what it is. A name that, sometimes when you say corruption, already gives us a little shock. And neuroscience, for those who don't know, neuroscience is a new science which studies this part more involved with neurons. Some do. In my specialization that I did in biology, there at Unicamp, one of the works I did was to make the neuron model. At that time, the neuron model only applied to the neuron itself. No one talked about the glia nor the blood that surrounds these structures anymore. Today, not anymore. The models are more complex and involve everything. Basically, neuroscience involves not only neuronal activity but the entire body's metabolism. And we're going to talk about the neuroscience of corruption. Look, it's not about the corrupt. We're going to focus a little more on corruption. Let's talk a little about corruption. But today, it's about corruption. So let's go. To have a self, for you to have a self within you, the self needs faith. The self is a belief. It is important for you to know this. The self is a belief. If you take a 2-year-old or 3-year-old child, this self does not have an established belief. It is a little loose. It depends on the culture you take. It does not have a self. It is a more Amerindian culture. There are some movements, some ancient peoples who simply have a we. The self does not have one. It is all together. It is a body territory involving not only the others. I won't go into that depth today, but we'll talk about it. The awareness of corruption, because corruption requires a corrupt self. There's a self that succeeded. Okay, let's go. How will the self succeed? Corruption is the act. But how will the self succeed? Just to know a little about this self. This self is a belief in this self, in an ego, in something that does not exist inside the brain. I do not exist. And it is interesting when the self disappears, only we, the human beings, appear. Where there is no self, there is us. We, all human beings. But Jackson, what if you have a group of selves, always one self, another self, several egos? So you have a We have a lot of selves, we have a lot of selves. It's not the we. Because the we has to take the I out. It seems rhetorical, but it's important for you to know this because the I is a belief. There are certain moments when you are in a state of flow. You have no perception of the I. You have a flow. You have a being that is doing, thinking, or entering a process of metacognition, and the I doesn't have it. The I doesn't have it. The I is a tool of identification. The I is a way of I am Jackson. My identity is this. I am an engineer. I am a gentleman. I am a businessman, whatever. So this self is an identification tool. But it is not to lose being. You are a living being, greater than me. And the self is a reduced being. Okay, let's separate the two things and we will get to corruption. The innocence of corruption. That is why I am giving you this brief introduction. Let's think about the democratic system and the republican system. Democracy. When within a real democracy comes from a territory. The territory, its needs, the living beings of that territory, humans as a part of the living beings of that territory, and comes rules and norms of the territory, small territory, the municipality, the state, and the federation. Okay. The republic is a different concept. You have norms and rules, often norms and rules made by people who have never been to the territory. These norms and rules are driven and placed within the territory. Normally the I has to do with the republic, and the we has to do with democracy. We without the I is something democratic, so you are all together, and the I has to do with the republic. So in the republic, this I, when the I makes a mistake, the I becomes corrupt, because the I in the republic sometimes seeks the individual's profit. A congressman, a senator, a president, a judge, a lawyer, an engineer, a musician, suddenly he starts that I of his and he is seeking profit, the result of this always competitive education, of always seeking to win, profit, profit, profit. So the I is corrupt. And the self, so we have corruption in a republic. But in a democracy there are selves. Oops, there are selves in a democracy. But then in a democracy we make mistakes. Let's fix them. There is a big difference, I say, that in the republic someone has to be blamed for the mistake, and normally there is someone who is trying hard and is really corrupt. But corruption is a complicated term for you to analyze coldly, and what corruption would be deception. Would it be an undue deviation? Well, that's what you have to measure. And the dictionary definition doesn't matter. What matters is in your head. That's what you have to measure. And it's always a term. It's the blues. For example, if corruption is a trick, if you're in a football game, if you don't trick your opponent, the game doesn't end. You pretend to go here and go there. You pretend to kick here and kick there. Do you understand? So you have a trick. But a trick within the rules of the game? Yes, but it's within the rules of the game. And if I buy the referee, oh, that could be corruption. Because now I went and did something that wasn't within the rules of the game. But what if I am a congressman, I am the Chamber of Deputies, and I am working on the rules of the game, and in the middle of the game, I change the laws, the rules of the game. Can I change the rules of the game in the middle of the game? Wouldn't that be corruption? In my opinion, that would be corruption. How can you change the rules of the game in the middle of the game, can't you? That would be corruption. But did you notice that she's going to, how is it corruption if it's now a law, and this law is now going to benefit everyone? So if I'm, And suddenly the deputies do something very wrong, and suddenly the deputies themselves create a law and say, no, it's not wrong anymore. For example, Aunt Quota for women. Oh, but everyone made mistakes. Oh no, there's no need to comply with the law, and we're going to make a change in the law, changing the rules of the game in the middle of the game. That to me smells like a huge amount of corruption. But it is within the legal processes. Otherwise, the executive branch, our country, the executive branch, would have to take care of the money and do things. Then the legislature comes and makes the secret budget. Since the Tamer government, they have been doing this secret budget thing. And then the legislature, which was only supposed to plan the future, which was only supposed to make laws, starts to control the money. Hold on. But this is corruption. How can it be corruption if there is a law? It is not corruption. Ah, but it is legal, but it is not immoral. So it is important for you to have this doubt. But there is a factor in corruption that causes indignation, and that is what we need. You see, I am not going to analyze the self, I am not going to analyze democracy, I am not going to analyze the republic, I am just going to analyze the term corruption. Neuroscience of corruption. Neuroscience, what happens with this name corruption in our heads? What affects this name? And this is important for us. In my concept of consciousness, it is a concept that has to do with the humorism expert aspect by Alfredo Pereira Jr. It has to do with Mente Damasiana by Antonio Damasio. So it is a concept that involves consciousness has a body metabolism, a feeling. Metabolism is a type of feeling. Metabolism, if it is existential, an existential feeling, this feeling that you have and that you perceive yourself to be in the feeling. Do you understand? These are strong feelings. Let's say you have feelings 1, 2, 3, 4. You have a lot of feelings throughout the day. But these feelings, they regulate the brain connectomy. I've divided the brain connectomy for you. Rock, paper, scissors. Rock is the brain connectomy that you go on automatic. It's Daniel Cullinan's quick thinking. You go on automatic. It's when you're bullying, or when you're attacking, or when you're defending yourself, or when you're on automatic, on high performance, on something that you don't think about doing. You do it automatically. That's rock. Replicate what you are. Sometimes, when you are conservative. What does it mean to be conservative? Being conservative is doing what you did before. So, there are times when you need to be conservative because you can't think about every detail, like brushing your teeth, for example. It's a habit that you have that you just put the connector on and do it. So, rock. And these connectums come as a result of a feeling. You have several feelings. One of these feelings is a metabolism that you have been learning. But always think about yourself from the moment you were born until you die. Not exactly now. So when you were very little, you were learning and developing your brain, and you were building existential feelings. Sometimes this child gets lost. When you were a child in a very intense tantrum, sometimes this child gets lost in a desire, in a will, in a passion. Do you understand? The child or the teenager themselves. So these are feelings that can get lost. The feeling that processes, that makes the connectome, it makes the connectome appear. Feeling restricts the brain connectums. In feeling, you are either in paper or in scissors, paper, rock, or scissors. Either you are in transcendence in a certain feeling, or you are trying to explore things with the prefrontal well activated, or you are very rock. It only kills the sensory well activated by action and reaction. This is important. The self is a type of belief. The self, which we believe that I have this self, we use this self, is a stone corrector. The self, it sets up a structure to be automatic. The self is normally conservative. He replicates what he knew. The self will not do a new thing because it is a conservative belief. So why am I talking about this idea? This idea is because the following, the feeling, in the feeling, you now have the 12 senses: auditory vision, noception, nocioception, chronoception, time, disappointment. So you have humor and use too, belonging as a perception. These feelings, these senses enter you on top of a feeling and give you a consciousness. So you go look, you have a vision, you see something, and you have a consciousness of it. Okay, great, so far. Almost pure neuroscience, right? We're not saying anything special, okay? When you say corruption, that word corruption has a very strong connotation. The word corruption triggers a collective sticky memory. Oh, what a strange topic, right? What is this? Look, there are no memories that you find horrible, yours, that you don't even want to think about, that you don't even want to know about. When an image comes to you, you get scared. So these memories, when a very aggressive memory comes to you, for example, the word betrayal, the word injustice, there is usually a collective pain in it. And when this collective pain occurs, collectively, you enter a rocky connectomy. You become a conservative person when it comes to corruption, when it comes to injustice, when it comes to betrayal. Each person is different. But on average, we become a mind, a stone connectomy, something that is very somatosensory. And how is this conveyed in a way that you don't understand? But with metacognition, you get it. Metacognition is when I'm talking to you and suddenly, right here next to me in my head, I'm thinking, why am I talking this way? Why am I acting this way? Or if I'm working or if I'm walking and I'm thinking about something else, why am I walking? Am I walking right? Am I not walking right? It's metacognition. So we're going to talk about the following. Metacognition is extremely important at times. I was talking to a friend of mine calmly about merits, a friend I hadn't seen in over 10 years. He has a slightly right-wing political focus, kind of wanting to go to the far right but denying the far right and returning to the right, but so far, it doesn't matter. I identify myself more with the progressives, but I don't identify myself as left-wing, much less with the right. I have another political uncertainty. And this friend of mine, at some point in the conversation, he started talking about a government, of another government, and he said he hates the leftist government and he always prefers anything right wing to any left wing government. I said, okay, but what are the parameters that you like to measure? Is the parameter GDP? Is it unemployment? I don't know. Social welfare? What is the parameter? Is it the population's debt? What is the parameter? Is it the school? What do you like to measure? He said corruption. But when he says the term corruption, at that exact moment when we were discussing the merits of the issues, I felt that something changed. In my head it tried to change, and in his own conversation it tried to change. The merit that was the parameter of one government or another disappears, and a connectomy enters, a feeling of corruption enters, that we should all go against corruption. And my mind changes, but in my process of metacognition, I just stopped. I didn't react in any way against it. I said, wow, where is this issue going? And why, instead of talking about merit, do we talk about corruption? Because if you use the term corruption, you hijack the merit, and now you are in the connector a stone. You are replicating what was collectively. And we all have to be against corruption. And that's natural. We want to be against corruption, but we lose in Egypt. The conversation becomes empty. There is no more content. It's just distilled hatred. Because now we talk about corruption and we don't talk about merit anymore. We don't talk about the measuring stick. We talk about friendships. We talk about faith. We talk about ideas. There are no more facts. There's no more concreteness about anything. There are only feelings. Go back there. It's the feeling you have, the information you get about your feelings. Be aware. In the middle of a conversation, even if it is a pleasant one, with someone, he or she may become corrupt and kidnap you. It hijacks the feeling, it changes the feeling almost automatically. And I thought, wow, how can this be? I was in a metric, I was speaking, I was in a conversation, and my feeling was changed along with the group. Normally, when I talk, I like to let go, and I really like it when the I disappears and becomes just a we. And suddenly I feel the group. I have an ease in reading people's bodies. And I don't always have the ability to read my own body, but naturally I can read people's bodies very easily. And I always feel like a we. And if I'm in a restaurant, a we that involves the waiter, the environment, the people next to me, in front of me. It's a body, okay? A body made up of these people, these living beings that are together in this place. And in this conversation, when my friend talks about corruption and changes his tone and changes his face and the way it changes and the movements become more abrupt and hatred sets in, I say, wow, what a beautiful thing is happening here. Someone uses the term corruption to manipulate a conversation. Use the term corruption to trigger things, to get away from the merits, to get away from evidence, these things, and it will just be an abstraction of things that came from a process of misinformation. And then when we start to realize what the merit is, where the problem lies, and on this subject I started talking about the Republic, about democracy, and it's no use anymore. And the poison reaches such a level that I even got a little scared, and these people really have to die. Look at the sentences. These people really have to die. People are really bad. Some people are very bad from birth. Hey, calm down. The conversation has changed. Before the conversation had merit, there was a child who is born, who is educated, who receives school education, especially collaborative education, that we have to enter collaborative education, stop being the competitive education of schools today, which is only leading people to have stronger egos and more profit for each individual. It leads to more corruption. It leads to our climate emergencies and competitive education. We have to move towards collaboration, little by little, slowly. Of course, we have to adopt a democratic system where we all work together. But at this moment, when hatred occurs, it seems that the will, at this moment, is you. Have an acute solution to solve corruption. And the acute solution is they are corrupt, not us. They who? The party you don't like, the religion you don't like, the neighbor you don't like, the competitor you don't like. So you throw corruption on the other side, and then you start working on an idea already polarized, already stone, already counting on the fact that everyone hates corruption. Hold on there. How far does corruption go? How far is it a hoax? How far is it within the metrics? How far has this name corruption come to change my feelings? Exchange my consciousness? Lose the merit of the conversation? Politicians use this too much. They'll get to a point, a method, written in corruption, invert the topic, and then start talking about this part with hatred, and modulate, and search. And when you talk about corruption, you start now with Think Fast by Daniel Collum. Then you go on automatic. Then you go on conservative. What does it mean to be conservative? To replicate what you were. So you replicate what you were. But the word corruption has already entered your antagonistic emotional part. Disgusting. With hatred of it. It loses merit. And then they will try to make it possible for there to be perhaps even a paralysis at that moment. This has already happened in some conversations I have had with older people who arrive at a time when corruption is coming and they themselves talk about corruption and they themselves say, everyone is corrupt, nothing will change. Look at this sickening thing. Nothing will change. The neuroscience of corruption, which I am talking about, is exactly that. You use the term corruption and it blocks the individual's mind and creativity disappears. It's not that creativity disappears. We are in a collective trauma. We are in a collective aversive memory, and the term corruption has put you in a connector, a rock, where the somatosensory is extremely activated, but the prefrontal is little activated. There is not much exploration. No, it has replicated what it was. And then in this replication of what it was, you go into rock mode, you go into fast thinking mode, you go into conservative mode, you go into replicating what it was mode, and loses merit. You lose the cause, you lose the essence, then you go to that part that can even be chronic too. Normalize the problem, that's how it is. No, wait a minute, what's that again? It's corruption. We have to fix it. We have to fix it. No, but it's his fault. No, we have to fix it. It's not about admitting it. It's not about normalizing corruption. We have to fix it, whoever it is, where the problem was. And it's not about exemplary punishment. It's about making sure it doesn't happen again. It's about correction. It's not just a process of punishment. The process of punishment fills up prisons of poor people, of course. Not the rich. They go to prison. They go somewhere else. I don't know. They go to Fabiana Lima. So if you punish these people, it's no use. You have to correct them. How can we correct them? With us, by integrating, talking, valuing each person, and devaluing each self or each being that has lost the being of this self that only wants profit. This self is a feeling, it is a belief. I repeat, there is no self here, there is none. But this belief in the self creates a self that always wants to be richer, more profitable, more profitable. No, and me, and the ego, and wants to stand above others. So being careful with this point is very interesting. We need to not get into this chronic disease, chronic corruption, and let it happen because it is not supposed to happen. We have to see rules and norms in this civilization, in this group of people here in my house, here in my neighborhood, here in my school, and in my city, and in my state, and throughout the national territory. That is to make the country increasingly democratic so that the rules adapt to each environment so that it is democratic, but also so that people do not, so that someone who is overcoming considers himself superior because he has a degree, because he does not have a degree. I don't know what, or because he's richer. Hold on. No, you are not superior. You are in that status. The higher your status, the more you have to know that you represent the entire population and that you have responsibility for the well-being of everyone. Everyone, you have responsibility. If your status is higher, your responsibility is greater to help the well-being of everyone. Democracy is to seek the well-being of everyone in favor of each one. How are we today? We live in a democratic republican system. So it's the well-being of a few to benefit a few. That's basically it. You chase money while a good part, a small part, a privileged minority is already born with a lot of money. So this privileged minority that is already born with a lot of money manages to change rules and regulations to continue having a lot of money. And that has to change. Hold on. It's not corruption because there's a law. Okay, it's not corruption because there's a law. But it's immoral, man. It's immoral. It has to change. Let's leave it at that. No, it's just like that. No, it's not just like that. And you can change it in your vote and your way of being. It doesn't matter if you vote for the right or the left. It doesn't matter. But when it's time to vote, you know I'm voting to change, to improve. And man, we make mistakes in any type of vote, but not with the feeling that corruption exists and that's just the way it is. I'm going to vote for the least worst. No. And it's not just when it's time to vote everywhere. Guys, this isn't right. Come on, but that's just how it is. No, it's not just like that. It's not right. They want to ruin the game. No, I'm against it. That's not how it is. I don't agree with it. That's not good for those people. If it's not good for those people, it can't be good for us. Because what's good for us is us, living beings. It's good for everyone. It's not good for a group of selves who want to earn more. It's good for everyone. And there's a solution to move forward. So the neuroscience of corruption is exactly that. When people start using the term corruption, right at the time I start negotiating the merit of well-being for everyone, corruption comes in, betrayal. enters, injustice enters, these names enter simply because your feeling changes. If my feeling changes, my introception is overcome by my feeling. Remember the Damasian mind? Introception, which you feel inside, proprioception, your movement in space, your position in space, and the feeling overcomes the introception. And in the next live, maybe now or the next week, this next week or the week after that, I will talk to you about when you, for example, introspection, I have a little stomach ache. Okay, that's introspection. But I have the feeling that I have to do something. I'm going to take this pain, this introspection, interoception, and I'm going to wrap it up so I can do it. I almost overcome it. I increase my stress with cortisol, and I overcome the pain. I have to do it. So what do? I close myself off in my pain to do things, right? Okay, I go and do it with pain and all, and I forget about my pain. Yes, but when night comes before going to sleep, I try to rest in the pain. It starts to appear in my chest, in my stomach, in some places, and I have to open myself up to resolve my pain. So I close myself off to doing and open myself up to being. When I open up, the pain starts to appear. Interoception, the pains of interoception start to appear in the stomach, in the kidney, everywhere they start to appear. So much so that during the day you spend the whole day walking around with the shoe on to do one thing and another. And at night, if you sleep with the shoe on, the pain threshold will go down and it will go, oops, you can't sleep with the shoe on because it will hurt. Why did that happen? The threshold went up during the day and you enveloped all of that and forgot about it. But at night you will open up to these pains and try to resolve them. And sometimes you can't resolve them and you will go to sleep a little more tense. This part is tense, another part is tense because you couldn't open up, okay? But the next day you try again. At night you open up to your pains up to the limit that you haven't reached. But open up to your pains. When you use this term of corruption, you lock yourself away. You lock yourself in a feeling, and this feeling, your pain even in your stomach, can go away. Because now you have hatred, you have anger. And if you were talking about a cause of this, that, and improving corruption in your college, corruption here or there, the term corruption can lose its merit, and there will be no evolution in solving the problem. You will only have to distill poisons, and you will have an enveloped sensation in your body, and with a target of anger at someone, or collectively, the poorest, blacks, Muslims, I don't know, anyone. Because you are going to project it in an acute way, trying to make it seem like a fever, like an acute thing for a specific reaction against corruption. And we are going to show it. They are the corrupt ones. We are going to show it and be exemplary with it. So guys, what I wanted to leave with you is this. Be very careful with the term corruption, because corruption comes to destroy. Of things. You see, we are not talking about corruptions in the private system of 50 billion reais that are desired here and there in the private system. But when it is in the public system, a few can become a major source of corruption. And then people say, look, corruption is corruption no matter the amount. It doesn't matter the amount, yes. The amount does matter, yes. And we have to resolve all of them to have something good, a fair society for everyone. But corruption will always occur. Wherever there is capitalism, there will be corruption. And what I'm saying is that even within communism, there is capitalism, exchange, payment, and one thing and another, the price of things, corruption will occur. Corruption occurs. Excessive profits occur. We have to continue to follow these norms and rules and live together and improve and not find a scapegoat, but rather resolve things and the merit of things. And of course, we will carry out a process of coercion against the corrupt. There is no point in punishing them too much because it fills the jail. But correction. But it is not a correction factor only in the lower class. Let's start with the correction from the upper class. Let's take away assets, right? Upper class. They entered the corruption process. They take away their assets. Let's take away their assets, okay? And let's divide this up better. And don't get lost with the term corruption. When you're talking to a friend and he mentions corruption, understand. Why did this term come up? Because the feeling changed. If my feeling changed, my conscience changed. So the people in front of me are modulating my way of thinking to control my conscience. Hey, calm down. Metacognition. What's happening to me? Look, my feelings are changing. Look, I'm no longer thinking about merit. Now I'm in tune with what the term corruption has taken us over, and we're distilling the poison to arrest the corrupt. But the merit was to create norms and rules so that this doesn't happen anymore, to make it harder for this to happen. This is the path we have to take. Guys, the neuroscience of corruption is this idea. How did this word become a word of engagement? A word that has a kind of collective aversive memory and is used simply to take away merit of things. We're going to talk about another topic maybe like this: enveloping, opening, and closing. To do things and open to be better. Until next Wednesday for you.